the reason I want to talk about Christian nationalism today and the way that Christians are viewing Christian nationalism and how Christians can kind of respond to Christian nationalism is because I do believe that the best form of change and progress happens within the communities of systems and belief systems that are kind of calling their own communities out and holding them accountable. Does that make sense? Because Christian nationalism, as I always say, is not about faith, it's about power. Christian nationalism is the belief that America was founded as a Christian nation and that the government should therefore actively promote and enforce Christian beliefs. That's a big one. And often this is a very narrow interpretation of Christianity, which I think is why that we see kind of a split amongst the Christian communities about whether or not Christian nationalism is an appropriate way to think about this country, this government. Because the reality is the Christian nationalism is not just individual Christians relying on their personal beliefs to vote in a democratic election. It is an ideology that says Christianity should be merged with American identity, embedded into law, and like in a lot of senses of the matter, privileged above all the other religions and above even a secular government itself. And that is very, very dangerous. And that's a problem I do hold that I think organized religion like Christianity is harmful in the end, more so than it does provide value. But even for the sake of having conversations with Christians, we can say that, look, it's not about attacking your religion. It's about facing the fact that anytime we have a fusion of religion and government, this leads to less freedom. This leads to more division and eventually, as we're fucking seeing, authoritarianism, okay? And there are many reasons it's dangerous, and not just for people who are non-believers. When religion gets tied to political power, it stops being voluntary. It really stops being like faith-based, okay? It starts being enforced. And any religion or lack thereof that is enforced by the state ends up corrupting both the government and that faith-based system. You know what I mean? True faith, and this is important to me even as an atheist. Again, do I fundamentally believe that organized religion is harmful to communities and individuals? Yes. But I also maintain that people deserve to worship however they want. Okay? That true faith is about free choice. I want people to be able to practice their religion however they want, as long as they are not forcing other people to live by their religion, as long as they're not evangelizing. Okay? Does that make sense? Because even people inside that religion that comes to power in a government, they end up losing their own freedom to interpret their faith in their own way. Because as we're seeing, like, Christian nationalism in the White House is actually a kind of a smaller subsect of the Christian organization as a whole in the United States. And what's going to happen is over time, the people in power in the White House are going to be the ones who decide what Christianity actually means for everyone else, even Christians who disagree. In any authoritarian regime where one religion is weaponized by the state, in modern theocracies, where even people of the dominant religion are punished for not conforming perfectly, as we saw in Europe when we saw all of the different splits of, Protestant versus Catholicism, etc. Okay, my point here is that freedom of religion for anyone to worship or not worship, okay, requires freedom from religious control of the government, which I don't know is what I thought this nation was actually founded on, not Christianity. And the fact is, we are seeing a rise in Christian nationalist rhetoric. I've been watching this for years, and it's something that I felt a lot of guilt about for not really like speaking out against it earlier in my journey. We all have our own journeys. I had to do what I had to do, but Here's what Christian nationalism actually looks like. And for Christians who don't really know what I'm talking about here, whenever someone in your community says that America should be a Christian nation, that is Christian nationalism. That's it. And we're going to watch some videos about how some Christians are saying, oh, people are just using the term Christian nationalism to make you afraid to stand up for your beliefs. That is a false narrative. That's just not true, okay? Laws that are talking about banning books, laws that are restricting healthcare for women, laws that are limiting education based on specific religious beliefs, that's Christian nationalism. That's authoritarianism using the organization of religion to control its people. Do you understand? And some leaders are actively and verbally, openly trying to erase the separation of church and state, okay? And the really dangerous part of this is that it often gets framed as something good, and there's like a moral panic that happens for Christians in this country who honestly are just going to church on Sunday so that their kids can go to Sunday school and meet friends and socialize, and build community. Those are really important parts of the human experience. And a lot of families in this country are just using religion to do that, but then they're getting told from the pulpit to fear modernization, to fear secularism, to protect morality and defend the family unit and preserve tradition. But underneath all of those feel-good phrases or, affirming narratives, it's about Christian nationalism is about giving one religious viewpoint power over everyone else. And whenever we start talking about power dynamics, it's not even about your faith. It's about control. It's not even about being, conservative or liberal or right or left. This is about whether we believe in freedom for everyone. Because when religion and government become one, as we have seen time and time again throughout history, it's not about faith. It's not just atheists or people who of other faiths who are going to suffer. And that's what I think we need to start allowing Christians to understand by having these conversations with them in a, calm, human to human way. Like, look, if you continue to allow Christianity to merge with Christian nationalism in your communities, in your conversations, eventually it's every single person whose interpretation of faith doesn't match the person who's in charge that's going to be, in danger, essentially, because whose Christianity is going to get enforced? Who's going to decide? I talk about this a lot, that when you fall into this idea of an absolute morality, you still fall into the trap of who's deciding what that absolute morality is. And we see this on a macrocosm, on a wide scale, whenever power and religion are merged. It always leads to one group dominating and everyone else being silenced or punished, and that is not freedom. I refuse to even allow the idea that that is why this country was built. Okay, that is authoritarianism. That is tyranny, wearing a religious mask. So if Christians want to defend true religious freedoms, okay, religious freedom is not about what you get to believe. It doesn't just mean Christians get to believe whatever they want. It means everyone gets to follow their conscience without fear. Do you understand? Buddhists, pagans, atheists, Jews, everyone, okay? Religious freedom means a Christian should never be forced to pray to a different God. It's true. But it also means that not everyone should be required to pray to that same Christian God, okay? Freedom is for everyone. And that is just not in going to be debated here in this house, okay? So that's really what I want to talk about today. Christian nationalism, it doesn't make Christianity stronger. It doesn't bring you, the everyday person, power. If you're a Christian living in a Christian nation, you're still under this forced belief system. Is that really what Christian nationalists want? It's crazy to me. It hollows out the faith you're proclaiming to believe in. It's using it like a tool to get votes. And in that sense, it stops being about any kind of personal identity whatsoever. It is holding you to a level of control that I honestly seriously doubt everyday Christians want. Especially when you even think about Jesus, who he was not one to force others to believe certain things. He was all about love and service and humility, regardless of who, was in power. And I just think that when Christianity becomes a weapon like this, when it becomes a tool for an authoritarian regime, even the arguments that about Christianity being like very love-based or charity-based, etc., when Christianity fuses with government, it betrays the heart of even that message. Do you know what I mean? And unfortunately, it's so easy to stay quiet as a Christian with movements like this rise, because it's like, well, they mean well, or maybe it won't get that bad, or, well, at least they're Christian. But, again, history kind of tells us otherwise. When religion is fused with political power, there's always going to be some kind of oppression. Again, that is why this country was formed. So I do want to encourage Christians to stand up now while they still can to protect everyone's rights, the right to worship, the right to think freely, the right to live without fear of a government-enforced religion, because eventually, I think that's one of the most courageous things everyday Christians can do right now, because if we don't have Christians standing up to Christian nationalism, it will bite them in the ass. And that's just a fact.